good evening, everybody, and welcome to this session of the book club. We have an author today that hasn't been explored yet by our group. So that's Franz Kafka. And we have also a new presenter. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Prabhanjan Mane to the book club and offer him the stage with his screen, his slides, his observations. And those of us who have read a little of Kafka know what an intriguing, writer he is. The Trial is something I read many years ago, and I was absolutely fascinated. And I'm really happy now to come back to it. So, Prabhanjan, would you like to take over and begin?
Yeah. More introduce Prabhanjan to others.
Okay, so yes, I should do that. So sorry. So Prabhanjan Mane teaches literature. He's a professor at Shivaji University in Kolhapur. And he has been writing. So he has articles and books. He has, I've, met him at seminars very often. And I'm so happy that he offered to do this book. So I'm really looking forward to it. Over to you. Now, would everybody else please switch off their mics for sure? And I think videos also.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohini Khote and Satish Khote, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak on Kafka's Trial in this club. At the outset, I would like to begin with a few observations like on Kafka. For the sake of our convenience, I have divided my discussion about Kafka's Trial in 3 sections. In the first section, I'll be dealing with a few biographical details of Kafka. In the second section, the plot of his novel, The Trial, which was published in 1925. And in the concluding part, I'll deal with a few important themes of this novel. And lastly, I'll talk about the 2 film adaptations of this novel. Kafka is one of the greatest influences on Western literature in the 20th century. He has inspired a whole range of artists, from the creators of the detective story to writers of the television series like Twilight Zone. He began work on The Trial in 1914 after his encounter with his fiancée, Felice Bauer, his sister, Erna Bauer, and Grete Bloch, a short-term lover. According to Kafka's friend Max Brod, he never finished the work and gave the manuscript to Brod in 1920. After his death, Brod edited this book, The Trial, into what he felt was a coherent novel and had it published despite the German ban on Jewish literature in 1925. The manuscript eventually passed from Brod's heirs to the German National Literary Archives in the late 1980s for several $1 million. Since then, new editions, some textual integrity restored to the English version of the story. Now I'll briefly talk about the biographical details of Kafka. The first of 6 children, Franz Kafka was born in 1883. His father His father, Hermann Kafka, was an industrious man. He owned a dry goods store in the Jewish ghetto in the city of. Hermann was ashamed of his Jewish heritage and tried as much as possible to appear German. He married into a higher social class. When he married Julie, Franz Kafka's mother, a bright child, Kafka was an excellent student at a prestigious German high school. When he graduated, his parents rewarded him with a trip to the North Sea. Afterwards, instead of entering a family business, Kafka decided to go to university. As a student, his rebelliousness led to reckless living and his deteriorating health. In 1902, Kafka met the writer Max Brod, and the two men became close friends. Kafka published his first work, Description of a Struggle, in 1904. In 1906, Kafka received his doctorate in law from the German University, Karl Ferdinand University in Prague. Armed with his law degree, Kafka entered insurance business. Through a family contact, he began a successful 16-year career as one of a handful Jews working in the semi-public German workers' accident insurance in 1908. There, he produced a technical writings with a masterful, lucid prose. He worked long hours and then managed his brother's factory. Seeing the obvious strain on his friend, Brod begged for help from Kafka's mother. She secretly hired a manager to take her place. During this time, Kafka lived at home in a room between the living room and his parents' noisy bedroom. He gained some recognition as a writer when he was awarded Theodor Fontane Prize in 1915. Kafka never married. He had several long-term relationships, but companionship troubled him, and he wrote in his diaries that he viewed the relationships as punishment for the happiness of being together. Kafka sabotaged his long engagement with Felice Bohr in 1970. 2 years later, he was engaged to the daughter of a janitor. Kafka's father said that the shame of such a match would be so disastrous that he would have to sell his business and emigrate. In response, Kafka wrote the angry and self-lacerating letter to his father and gave it to his mother. She decided against giving it to her husband. Kafka broke off the relationship just after they had found an apartment together. Not surprisingly, work and family strains began to take their toll, and Kafka took restorative vacations for his health. Finally, in 1923, he retired from business in order to devote himself to writing. He also moved to Berlin. Missing the activity and tension of home, he returned. His health, his health problems persisted. However, he traveled to find a kinder climate for his fragile condition. Kafka died of tuberculosis on June 3rd, 1924, in Austria, near Vienna. Now we'll talk about the novel, the Trial, which was published posthumously in 1925. Quite interesting novel. Uh, at the beginning of this novel, at the beginning of the Trial, we find a central character, the protagonist, Joseph K., who awakes on the morning of his 30th birthday. And surprisingly, he is greeted by two warders, Franz and Willem, who tell him he is under arrest and introduce him to the inspector. The inspector refuses to tell Joseph K, why he has been arrested. Obviously, confused, K is surprised when they let him go with orders to come back for his trial. After work that evening, K talks with his landlady, Frau Grubash, who is sympathetic to his condition, and she tries to understand his emotional situation. Joseph K. Likes Fraulein Bussner, whose room the inspector had commandeered. When she returns late at night, K insists on talking to her about his day and then makes a grab for her. Joseph K. is told to present himself for a brief inquiry into his case. He goes to the address only to find that it's a tenement house. A woman doing laundry directs him to the court of inquiry. The court is sitting in a stuffy room packed with bearded men in black. K addresses the audience about the stupidity of the court. He is cut off by a man grabbing the laundry woman and crying, bellowing, etc. Joseph K. returns to the offices the following Sunday, but no one is there except the laundry woman. She is the wife of the usher and explains that the man who had grabbed her was a law student, Bertold, who has been chasing her. K examines the books left on the book only to find that they are pornography. The usher's wife tells him about the examining magistrate, but Bertold enters and carries her off. The usher returns and complains about Bertold, and he leads K into the labyrinthine law offices in the attic to look for him. They pass through hallway filled with accused men. K feels faint and has to sit down. He makes his way out, carried along by a man and young woman badly shaken. K further wants to talk to Fraulein Bussner again, but cannot find her. A commotion in the hall reveals that Fraulein Montag, a sickly teacher, is moving in with her. Joseph K. is really upset and goes to Fraulein Montag. She will not tell him why she is moving in and says that Bussner does not want to talk to him. Joseph K. is walking to his office in the bank when he hears a horrible scream. He finds the warders, Franz and William, being whipped in a storeroom. They plead with him to help them, but the Viper is adamant about doing his duty. K tries to buy him off and fails. The next week, still troubled, he goes back to look at the room, only to find the Viper and the two warders there again. Joseph K's uncle Carl, upset over this case, comes in from the country. They go to see one of his uncle's friends, Dr. Huld, who is very sick but knows all about K's predicament. K is distracted by the lawyer's nurse, Lenny, and sneaks off to visit her in the middle of the conversation. Lenny shows him her webbed fingers and tries to seduce him, giving him a key so he can return at any time. He returns and his uncle berates him for fooling around when he should be resolving his case. K obsesses over the case, which has dragged on for almost 6 months. One of his work clients, a manufacturer, knows about his situation and tells him that a painter called Titorelli might be able to help him. Joseph K goes to see Titorelli. The painter explains that things are never as they seem and elaborates on the nature of the police system. Joseph K is disheartened, leaves after buying 3 identical pictures from the painter, only to find this building too has law offices in its attic. When Joseph K decides to dismiss Dr. Huld, he finds a half-naked man, Block, with Lenny. Block describes his own case, which has been going on for more than 5 years. Block tells him that it is widely believed that K will lose his case. K consults Huld, who tells him that Lenny sleeps with all of the accused men. Dr. Huld, to illustrate the nature of the law to K, makes Block abase himself. K is asked to escort a client around the cathedral. While there, he meets a priest who tells him he is the prison chaplain and that his case is going badly. The priest relates the parable called Before the Law. A man from the country comes to the door seeking admittance to the law, but the guard says he cannot enter. The man sits and waits for the door for years, trying to find a way to make the guard let him in. Finally, when he is about to die, he asks why nobody else ever come to the door. The guard says that the door was only ever meant for him, and now it will be closed. A and the priest discuss the parable. Is the doorkeeper subservient to the man or vice versa? Did the man come of his own free will? Is he deluded? The priest says that it is not necessary to accept everything as true, only to accept it as necessary. K counters that the world must then be based on lies. In the concluding part of the novel, we find that on the evening before his 31st birthday, two men come to Joseph K's apartment and take him away. At an abandoned quarry, they take off his coat and shirt and lay him down. Taking out a butcher knife, they pass it to each other over him. He is supposed to take it and plunge it into his own chest, but he does not. Instead, looking over at a house across the way, someone is standing at the window on the top floor. Joseph wonders who it is and where the judge is and the high court. He holds out his hands and spreads his fingers. One of the men takes the knife and stabs him, twisting the knife twice. His last words are like a dog. The novel ends here. Quite interesting novel. One of the prominent themes of the novel is the religion. The role played by religion in this novel is quite significant. A central element to Judeo-Christian theology is the belief that human beings are guilty of original sin. There are various ways to deal with this situation, but in many theological doctrines, redemption and the entry to heaven depend on people leading moral lives. For Protestants, salvation is gained when the individual confesses to God. Assistance in this task comes from the Bible as well as through the teachings of those who spend their lives studying the Bible. In Judaism, the book of God is the Torah, and literally speaking, God is the law. K's story takes place in a world familiar with this theology. Yet, this theology is changing frequently. For example, the Calvinist theory of predestination, which is the belief that what you do in life does not matter since people have already been selected by God for salvation, is evoked by K's action. Joseph K has been predestined for a judgment. In religious terms, this means he should accept his guilty nature and seek redemption in whatever form the court decides. One of the characters in this novel, Block, has done so and has avoided death, but has paid a humiliating price. He must forever run on all fours before a representative of the law. Joseph resembles a character from Old Testament named Job. Job is a wealthy man who strongly believes in God. One day, the devil makes a bet with God that if allowed to do so, he can put Job's faith on trial so that he curses God. The bet is on, but despite all the pranks and hardships of a trial by faith, Job does not curse God. Instead, it is Job's faith that sees him through this entire situation. Joseph K, who has been similarly slandered by someone, undergoes a trial, but he has no faith in the law to see him through. K's predicament is very much neatly summed up when he mentions, I quote, "I don't know the law," unquote. Various religious ideologies like Calvinism, Protestantism, Judaism are not the only theologies under assault. The descriptions in this novel, especially about the court's personnel, evoke the cosmology of Catholicism with its levels of uh, angels, history of inquisitions, and its secret tribunals of cardinals. Also, Catholic degrees of grace are transformed into degrees of guilt. There is, of course, innocence and guilt, the discussion of which always involves a statement that K must know some kind of law. With Fraulein Bussner, he discusses being guiltless and not as guilty as they thought. Much later, literally describes the state of permanent guilt, actual uh, acquittal, apparent acquittal, and some sort of protection. Catholics believe that sins can be dealt with through the sacrament of confession. In this sacrament, the guilty person discusses his or her sins with a priest, and he gives counsel, as well as a set of number of prayers to be recited. That is how the person may cleanse his or herself of the sin. This practice was abused during the time of inquisitions, when torturers forced people to confess to crimes like witchcraft. In Catholic fashion, Joseph K. is constantly told that, I quote, "All you can do is confess. Confess the first chance you get," unquote. This is one of the prominent themes of this novel. Religion plays a significant vital role in the action of this novel. In fact, this novel has two film adaptations. The first is The Trial, which was released in 1962, directed by Orson Welles. And this director has himself said that Trial is the best film I have ever made. It is a black and white film adaptation, and Orson Welles played the advocate opposite to Anthony Perkins as Joseph K. The second film adaptation is, this is my favorite, in fact, and using a script by Harold Pinter, David Hugh Jones directed a 1993 remake of the film. Joseph K. is portrayed by Kyle MacLachlan, and Anthony Hopkins plays the role of the priest in this film. Quite interesting. Both these film adaptations are quite interesting. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about Franz Kafka's The Trial.
Thank you. Okay, Moini.
Yeah.
Moini.
Yes, just give me a moment.
Yeah.
Start up. Yeah, here I am. Okay, thank you, Prabhanjan.
1 minute, everyone, please now unmute yourself and start your videos also so we can see you.
And, start thinking of your questions. What I immediately feel like saying is this, that when I read the novel, what was overridingly, the impact, the whole overriding impact was that sense of anxiety and dread and K. Now, all these things, the protagonist is just called K. So even in that, the novelist is withholding information. So that is a constant that we just don't know enough ever, and neither does K. Waking up one fine morning and just being arrested for what crime he doesn't even know. Poor guy has probably not committed any crime. So to me, it was that atmosphere that was being built up and the absurd element, particularly the interactions with the women, are so absurd. But now, I think let's talk of the religion aspect, which had not hit me. So would you say that this novel is in a way a satire on religiosity and religious principles and people who consider that religion must be the guiding, the guideline, as it were, of your conduct in life? Is this a way to read it?
Yeah. I do agree with you, ma'am. In fact, Franz Kafka make a kind of satire of contemporary religious system as well.
Clearly, he is mocking the legal system also.
Yeah.
And the
Yes,
fact
yes,
that he himself
yes.
has a degree in law. And, I think today's newspaper has the Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramana, saying that the court should be the last resort. There are other ways. There are other simpler, quicker, more friendly ways, arbitration and so on and so forth. So the court should be the last resort. So one thing pretty obvious is that the legal system is not what you would like it to be or what it ought to be, right? It's just such a confusing labyrinth. Absolutely. So that, yes, I interrupted you actually. Go on about the religion aspect.
Yes. Obviously. In fact, I think that it's a kind of parable. Parables are familiar teaching devices that reveal moral lessons through short and simple stories. Similarly, this novel, Kafka intentionally set out to write parables, not just novels about human condition. And the trial, in fact, a parable that includes the smaller parable of the gatekeeper. And there is clearly a relationship between the two, but the exact meaning of either parable is left upon to the individual reader. And discuss the many possible readings, both the short parable and their discussion seem to indicate that the reader is much like the man at the gate, and there is a meaning in the story for everyone, just as there is one law for each person.
Okay.
Okay.
Other people, please. Yes.
Ketki Bose, do you have something to say? Why don't you please switch on audio.
Ask.
Yes, next after Ketki it is Latika. Yes, Ketki. Go ahead.
Yes, Ketki.
Go ahead.
I really don't have any questions at the moment. When I do have a question, I'll certainly put it forward.
Okay, Ketki. You're a newcomer, that's why I gave you the chance first to ask.
All of you.
Okay, Latika, go ahead.
Yes, I read this book long ago, and I have a very vague recollection of it, but I do know of its importance. I wanted to ask Professor Mane whether he felt at any time that this book was a precursor to a very totalitarian state that would come about in that country.
Yes, absolutely.
Totalitarian in any way, whether it's under Nazism, fascism, or later on under communism, whatever. In Prague.
Very good question. Yes. Yes, Prabhanjan.
Yes. I do agree with you, ma'am. It's a kind of representative work of totalitarian sect during that time.
There was another film, no, not The Trial, but later on, a French film called The Confession,
Yes.
where Yves Montand acted. That was also about a man's trial. And it is very, very vicious and brutal. And one never really understands what he's being tried for. So it's a bit like that.
I see. Must be based on this work or inspired
So
by
it's based on another novel, you know,
Okay.
but it is along the same lines.
So, Prabhanjan, what would you say is the most important feature of Kafka's writing? I mean, is it the absurd, or I mean, what is it? What do you think is the important thing? Prabhanjan? No, yeah.
I personally feel that Kafka is trying to human condition in a contemporary world and how pathetic condition.
Prabhanjan, come close to the mic, please. Come close to the mic and speak.
Also, somebody has their mic on and has a lot of background noise. So could you see to that? It's very disturbing. Yes.
Go ahead, Prabhanjan.
Yes. I think, ma'am, that Kafka is trying to project the kind of dichotomy. On one hand, the universe, and on the other hand, the individual. Joseph K. is, except for a brief friendship with Hesterer, prefers his own company in this novel. In the matter of his trial, he did not want to enlist anyone's help or aid, thus initiate them in the matter even distantly. And to do so, be to initiate another person into himself. This is an act he cannot even do in the form of a petition. This is as it should be, since the trial is his own, it is his guilt, and no matter what he does or where he goes, that is where the inquiry will be located. As much as K desires it, he is not alone. Everyone who knows him also knows about his trial. From his point of view, the entire universe finds him guilty, from the casual observer to the men who kill him like a dog at the end of the novel.
Okay, so it would be a comment on human society. You know, how could you judge others where there's no smoke without fire, that kind of attitude. Okay, so Prashant
wants to say
something. Please come in, Prashant.
Okay, Prabhanjan, I enjoyed your talk very much. I have
very much, sir.
A few observations to make. You can respond if you wish, but you don't really have to. The first is that, an important feature of the novel was Kafka's relationship with his father. one gets the impression that
Yes, yes.
the authority figures are representatives of his father. Do you agree with this view?
Yeah, yeah.
My first, or shall I just complete all my observations and then you can talk?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, sir.
That's the first point. Secondly, observe that Ka, I mean, I'm using the German pronunciation, is named naturally after Kafka. There is no doubt about it.
Yes.
Ka speaks for Kafka. And you also observe that one of the whippers is called Franz, the same name as
Yeah.
Franz Kafka. So I think that may be important, and you might like to comment on that. Shall I just complete all my observations?
Latika, 1 minute. Latika, please.
That the novel
Latika.
is an incomplete novel.
Prashant, 1 minute.
Kafka never
Latika.
completed anything because he didn't plan to publish anything. Almost everything which Kafka, wrote was not meant for publication. In fact, he had told, as you rightly said, his friends to burn everything. They had more sense. They decided not to burn it. So clearly, the novel is incomplete. But what is important is that it brings in the last chapter, soon after, the parable of the man before the law. And obviously, most of you take a fairly comprehensive view, fairly sympathetic view of religion. I don't. To me, it seems that the chaplain is absolutely wrong and the man before the law has been tricked. I mean, that's a position which I will take, but I think then there's another point, and that is about the significance of women in the novel.
Yes.
There are a number of women, and you ought to comment perhaps on that. Finally, it's important that the contents are realistic in some ways, but the techniques is entirely unrealistic. And perhaps that is the sense in which the novel has been called a modernist novel. I think, and coming back to Mohini's point about absurd, I think it's more existential than absurd, because obviously Kafka was seen as a predecessor of existentialism. So I think perhaps you could comment on that. And I think Latika made a very good point about the atmosphere, about dictatorships. So I think this is roughly what I have to say. And it will be good now to have your observations, your responses, shall I say?
Yes, sir. Let me begin with your first observation. Franz Kafka's relationship with his father. In the diaries, also Max Brod and many biographers of Kafka have mentioned the kind of relationship which Franz Kafka had with his father, the tense kind of relationship. And in a series of letters, he has explained that relationship. Now, I would like to talk about, since you have rightly pointed out the roles played by women in this novel. I'm keenly interested in that. Women, for Joseph K., perform almost the impossible and mysterious acts which keep life functioning. A woman's hand indeed works quite wonders. He thought, Joseph K. thought he might have been smashed the dishes on the spot, but he certainly couldn't have carried them out. Women in this novel are also capable of great influence on the unknowable court. Women have great power, and I would like to quote from the novel. I quote, "If I could get a few of the women I know to join forces and work for me, I could surely make it through," unquote. However, this dream is as unlikely as the idea of flogging a judge. The reason is that women in this novel have their particular doors to guard, like gatekeepers. They also have a defect. For example, Lenin has a claw and is trying to call. She is not a gatekeeper, but also someone who works and learns. She will not help K because he is incapable of respecting her or the law. The role played by women in this novel are significant. We cannot ignore their role in the development of the action of this novel. Moreover, I do agree with your observation regarding whether it is an absurd novel or existential. It is an existential work. We cannot say that it is absurd novel as such, but it is an existential.
Please speak near the
Yeah.
mic. Please speak near the mic. We can't hear you clearly.
We lost at least 30 seconds, Prabhanjan. Could you repeat what you said?
Maybe if you close your video, it will be better.
Prabhanjan, close your video and just talk, please.
I will close it for you, sir.
Can you repeat what you said just now? Seconds.
I think we lost him.
I think we lost Prabhanjan. I think more.
Oh dear. Okay, Prashant,
Yeah.
would you just tell us a little bit about the difference between absurd and existential?
See, the term absurd is much later than existential. Existentialism came as early as the writings of Kierkegaard. That was early 19th century. See, and the absurd is, I should say, a development of existentialism,
Mhm.
fostered and shall I say, I'm sorry to use the same word, developed by Camus. And of course, Camus took it in a certain sense. And we associate the theatre of the absurd with Camus' position, which is not quite right because Camus had a positive side to himself. Now, here what you observe is that, in line with people like Kierkegaard and Sartre. In fact, Sartre came later, so Kierkegaard and Jaspers were the important figures. See, you have a meaningless universe, a universe in which authority has no sense, in which law and order is not obeyed. In fact, there is no sense in law and order. Actually, Prabhanjan wrote his thesis on law and order, so maybe he could talk a little about the way in which the court functions.
Yes,
But after all,
Prabhanjan,
the title
you're on now.
all
Can
the
you speak?
trial. Remember, the title is a trial.
yes,
It doesn't
yes.
take place here.
Prabhanjan, can you speak now?
Hello.
Bol, go ahead.
Yes.
You heard what Prashant
Prashant,
Sinha said?
Prashant was saying that, in the world portrayed, authority figures, institutions are not what a person expects them to be or wants them to be. They're quite chaotic. And he said that your thesis was on law and order. So
Yeah.
to talk about that aspect, like how does Kafka present the law and order situation in this novel?
Go ahead. Hebak,
I
Prabhanjan,
deliberately took a student. He did his doctorate. Hello.
Yes, go on. We
go
can
on,
hear you.
speak. We can hear you well.
So, especially in this work, the trial, his focus was completely on the law, obviously, and how the legal system is completely chaotic, beyond almost incomprehensible to ordinary people,
Yes.
like a person like Joseph K. And he's simply he was imprisoned, what exactly crime he has committed. And
Hello, have we lost you again?
We have lost him.
Yeah, we lost him again. Mo, what do we do now?
Yeah, no, I think
1 minute. Can I ask Sheena, do you have anything to say?
Sorry, I haven't finished reading it.
Okay, but
Yeah.
what's your take on it so far?
It's very interesting. There were no charges at all, not even a trumped up charge. So it's interesting to see where it will go. It obviously won't go anywhere and he will be executed. But how can something like that even happen? Is what I was thinking. I mean, what made Kafka write this? Did he see something or did he know somebody like that who was just executed for, without having a proper trial? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this guy was innocent. Yeah, he was framed
so.
by somebody.
Prabhanjan?
Hello. Yes.
Would you like to respond to Sheena?
I could not
No, basically,
listen to.
we're still talking about the law and order situation and this portrayal of the legal
Yes.
system, the judicial system in this novel is far from heartening, right? So,
Yes.
So why? Sheena's basic question is, why has Kafka chosen to portray it in this light?
While talking about the biographical details of Kafka, I mentioned that since he studied law, he was very much familiar with the workings of judicial system. He knew the loopholes, the problems of judicial system of his time. Moreover, how difficult it is for a common man to understand the judicial system and to go through this
Its
passage.
processes.
Yes.
So Sheena, I think that basically answers your question. That the obfuscation, the obscurity, the opaqueness of the system is what a layman like you and me would be just afraid, confused, not know how to navigate. So that's the image that he has of the legal system. All right. So a satire for sure.
But I believe Sony is also there. Can you ask Sony? Sony, do you have any comments to make? Sony Valecha, you're there. Do you have any comments to make?
She's not there now.
She's not there. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else would like to say something?
I think, see, there are newcomers like Wispy.
Yeah.
Wispy, would you like to?
Yep.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I think what struck me throughout the presentation and the discussion is the irrationality of the events. We cannot find answers to our questions because there are no answers. And I think this is what Kafka was telling us about the way the society of his time, or the way he saw the world moving, that there was, you couldn't get explanations because you have to have a rational world to find explanations and answers. And I think besides, I think there is the element of absurdity that you mentioned also, Mohini, though the term absurd may have come in later as a literary format. But the way in which the Kafka has presented this whole thing, I think he's telling us, you may look for answers, but you won't find them. And I think this is what struck me throughout, as we've been struggling, I think, through the session also to find answers, to the questions we've been putting to Professor Mane. This is just my...
Prabhanjan,
Yes, indeed.
Prabhanjan,
Yes,
would you like to say something?
Yes. Certainly, absolutely. Kafka is trying to project on this situation itself, how it is simply incomprehensible for a person like Joseph K. to understand why he's arrested, why he's supposed to go through the trial, is the situation.
And
Simply-
K is basically the common man, isn't he?
Yes, yes, ordinary man
Every
like
man,
us.
layman, yes.
Layman. Yeah.
Any questions about the religious aspect? Because I found that very interesting indeed. So Kafka was not a religious person, clearly. He had, I'm presuming, Prabhanjan, I don't know, merely from our discussion, I'm saying that he had probably rejected formal religion, which is why he can talk of, talk in these terms like predestination and Catholic inquisitions and whatnot. So would you tell us a little about that?
Kafka's novel, especially this trial, has often been interpreted as a religious commentary,
Okay.
especially about Calvinism, Catholicism, and specifically Judaism. Being a Jew, he was keenly interested in talking about the roles played by religion in the life of people.
Oh, so you mean that all these, the confusion, the wandering, the labyrinthine quality, of experience is reflecting
Yes.
belief that man is subject to predestination.
Yes, yes.
Cannot know, we need not know, but our future is already charted out. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And what about those inquisitions that you were talking about in terms of Catholicism? How do those, oh yes, you said degrees of grace, degrees of guilt is paralleled by the degrees of guilt that we hear about in the novel. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Mo, I think Soni Walecha is in the, since she hasn't said anything, she's usually a
No,
regular
but-
person.
Yeah, but is she there?
Soni, are
Is
you
she
there?
actually there? What about Anna? Anna, would you like to weigh in? Suchitra?
Sujitra, we haven't seen you for quite some time. Why don't you say something?
Okay.
I think now we need to wind up more.
Yeah, okay. Prashant, any final comments? And then
Yeah, I have a couple of comments.
Yeah, please.
First is that, see, the notion of the absurd is built around the whole idea of the myth of Sisyphus. And that is something which is not really used in the novel at all. So I'll definitely say it's in some ways a pre-absurd novel, but I think I wanted to bring up this whole point about Dickens and Kafka. So Dickens worked as a law clerk, but without a degree in law, and he hated lawyers all his life. So in a sense, in many ways, Dickens and Kafka have the same attitude towards law and order, because don't forget, The Bleak House of Dickens is a very, very sharp commentary on the law and order situation, on lawyers, on judges. See, Kafka's system involves commentary on all these people, judges, lawyers, examining magistrates, policemen. But of course,
whole
it's very,
system.
very, very interesting, as I said, that one of the warders is called, Franz. And one point which I had made, which perhaps Prabhanjan tried to answer, but because of the situation of his microphone, it couldn't be answered. And that is that the contents of the novel are realistic in the sense that, we know that this is how the world has gone, but the techniques are entirely modernist, totally, I should say surrealistic.
That's it. That is the word that I wanted to ask you about. Would you say that this is surrealistic?
Yes, the situation and the kind of handling is obviously surrealistic situation.
Yeah,
Handling.
sort of
The
nightmarish.
technique, I
Yeah.
mean.
Okay. So thank you very much. I think we've come to the end of the evening. Prabhanjan, thank you very much. I think this is a text
Thank you. Thank you.
very few people have read, right? I remember thinking when I read it many years ago that I must read more, you know, I mean, I found him so fascinating. But, you know, it's a long way away now, and I can't remember everything, and I've read only half the novel now. But, you know, at one point, I just wondered, how was Kafka taken in his own lifetime, in his own society? How were his writings viewed? I mean, did people think that this was literature, or did they think it was a little crazy? What did they think?
About Kafka?
In his own time.
His contemporary writers, you mean?
Yeah, readers, you know, society. What was the take? You know, like some writers are accepted quickly, some are resisted, some are liked, some are not. They have to wait to die until they're appreciated. So where does Kafka come in? What was the response to his writing in his own time?
During his time, he was not at all that much significant figure.
Appreciated.
Because, he tried not to publish his work during his lifetime. In fact, as I said, he instructed his friend, Max Brod, not to publish the work and totally burn it away. But thanks to Max Brod, he decided to publish most of his works posthumously. That's why we have this novel. Unfinished.
All right. So the trial was published a year after he died.
Yeah.
I mean, let's say then, maybe not in his own lifetime, but when it came out, what was the general reader response?
Yeah, obviously, it is considered as one of the significant works as far as existential works are concerned, or existentialism is concerned.
Yeah, that's now. But what about then? Was it immediately taken up as a great work?
Yeah. During 30s, it was considered as a significant phase in existentialism, because it paved way for the later budding writers. It created a sensation in Europe, not only in Europe, but throughout the world.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Prabhanjan.
Mo, before you end, let me make a request. There are a lot of newcomers here, like Prabhanjan. I haven't seen him in a regular way. Ketki Bose, Raj Kadam is there. Vispi is there. Vispi Balaporia. I'm requesting all of these. Please send your email IDs. You know, you have come on the screen, etc. Please send your email IDs to mohinikhote@gmail.com, so we can put you on the mailing list. Vispi
and WhatsApp also, group. We have two.
mohinikhote@gmail.com.
Right.
MOHINI.
Mohini, is it all lowercase?
Yes, all lowercase.
Okay.
Mohini Khote, KHOT @gmail.com. Okay. So please send us so that we can be in touch with you. So thank you very much. Mohini, take over.
Okay. So Prabhanjan, many thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Demystifying, yes, Kafka for us.
And you have to come again 2-3 months from now. We are going to ask you to talk again.
Yeah.
Tell you what to expect in the coming couple of Sundays. So, on the 12th, that is next Sunday, we have Sanjay Phadke about a book called The Diamond Cutters. I don't know why my voice is echoing. Anyway, but please note that he has changed the book. All right. He was going to talk about weapons of math destruction, but that is postponed for later. Now it is The Diamond Cutters. Okay, and we will send you the flyer immediately. On the 19th of December, we have Ravi Sonarkar talking about a book that has taken the world by storm, that is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. We've all heard of the book, many of us have read it, so it will be an excellent time to bring your ideas together and have a discussion with Ravi, who's going to be presenting it. 26th of December, we have kept blank because we thought Christmas, holiday, people will be traveling, having other things to do than to look for a book discussion. So nothing on 26th. And on the 2nd of January, now I'm mentioning this because there's a change here. Anika Madhura Peruma was going to talk about A Raisin in the Sun, but she has changed her mind and now she's going to talk about this novel, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Now this is 50 years old, this novel, all right? But it is one of those futuristic ones. So many of you may have read it as teenagers, as I did, or you could just, brush up your memory a little bit or get hold of the book, which is what I'm trying to do. Okay, so that's it. And the year is coming to an end. I think we've had some very good discussions. I'd like to thank all of you for making those presentations, for joining those discussions, and making the book club something worth waiting for. Thank you very much, everybody. Above all, thank you, Prabhanjan, today, and thank you, Prashant, for coming in with some very illuminating and meaningful observations, which helped us also, and everybody. Thank you so much. Goodbye for today. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All the very best to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. For me here. I was listening also. Hi, Satish.
Good to hear your voice.
Yeah. Okay. I keep eavesdropping. Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. You're allowed to. Don't worry.
Okay. Bye then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.